He wasn't sick. He never had cancer. But nobody in that house knew that. And for 6 months, a dying man watched his family show him exactly who they really were. What they did will leave you speechless. You know, there are some people in this world who build everything from nothing, who wake up before the sun rises, work until their hands ache, and pour every drop of themselves into making a life that means something. Old Henry Caldwell was that kind of man. Henry lived in a grand estate just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. The kind of house with tall white columns and a long driveway lined with oak trees that swayed in the summer breeze. He had built it all himself. A real estate empire. A luxury hotel in downtown Atlanta called the Peachtree Grand. Office buildings. Hundreds of acres of land. A family business that employed over 200 people. By any measure, Henry Caldwell was a successful man. But success has a funny way of growing quiet when the years start piling up on your shoulders. Henry was 73 now. His hair had gone silver. His hands, one strong enough to lay brick and sign million-dollar contracts, now trembled slightly when he reached for his morning coffee. He moved a little slower, laughed a little less. And on the nights when the big house felt too quiet, he would pick up a framed family photo from his nightstand and just stare at it for a long, long time. In that photo, everyone was smiling. His wife, Dorothy, dressed in pearls. His eldest son, Gerald, standing tall like he owned the room. His second son, Raymond, with that easy grin. His daughter, Patricia, always a dramatic one. And then there was his youngest, his baby girl, Lily. Sweet, quiet Lily, with her arm wrapped around her daddy's waist like she never wanted to let go. Henry looked at that photo and asked himself a question that changed everything. Who in this house truly loves me? Not the money, not the house, not the name on the buildings. Him, Henry Caldwell the man, the tired, aging man who had given his whole life to people who may or may not even notice when he was gone. It was a heavy question, and it sat on his chest for days. So, Henry did something that most men would never dare to do. He picked up the phone and called 2 people he trusted completely. His longtime family lawyer, Mr. Arthur Hines, and his personal physician, Dr. Samuel Price. The 3 of them sat together in Henry's home office, the door closed, voices low. "I want to run a test," Henry told them. "I want to pretend I'm dying. I want to see who really loves me and who is just waiting for what I leave behind." Arthur raised his eyebrows. "That's a serious thing, Henry." "I know," Henry said, "which is why I need your help." Dr. Price leaned forward slowly and nodded. "I'll tell the family you have stage 4 lung cancer. 6 months, maybe less." Arthur added, "And I'll quietly move half of your finances into a protected account. That way, if anyone tries to take advantage of the situation, they won't find everything." Henry looked at both men and gave a tired but grateful smile. "Good," he said. "Now let's see who my family really is." The plan was set. The test had begun. And none of them had any idea just how much they were about to reveal about themselves. The morning after the plan started, Henry Caldwell shuffled down to breakfast, looking like a man already halfway to his grave. He coughed. He winced. He barely touched his eggs. He told Dorothy he felt too tired to go to his office, and then he went back to bed and stayed there. That afternoon, Dr. Price came to the house and gathered the whole family in the living room. He looked at each of them with sad eyes and said, "I'm sorry to tell you this. Henry has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. At this point, we are looking at 6 months, maybe less." The room went still as a church. Gerald, the eldest, covered his mouth. Raymond looked at the floor. Patricia burst into tears right there in the living room. And Lily, sweet Lily, grabbed her father's hand and started crying so hard her whole body shook. "Daddy, no. Please, Daddy, no." Dorothy pressed her hand flat against her chest and lowered herself slowly into a chair, like the air had been knocked clean out of her. For the first few days, the whole family poured into Henry's bedroom. They brought soup. They sat with him. They held his hand and told him how much they loved him. It felt real. It looked real. And Henry, lying in his bed and watching through half-closed eyes, allowed himself a small, cautious hope that maybe he'd been wrong about them. But a week passed, and then things began to shift. Dorothy stopped coming to his room every day. "It's too hard," she told Patricia. "I can't watch him suffer." She started spending more time with her friends, more time on the phone, more time away from the house altogether. Gerald started showing up at the family business, introducing himself to board members as the man in charge. He threw 2 office parties in 1 month, bought himself a brand new Cadillac Escalade, and started flying business class to meetings her father had always handled by phone. Raymond disappeared on a work trip that seemed to involve a lot of social media posts from Miami beaches and upscale restaurants. Patricia was the one who surprised Henry the most. One afternoon, she walked into her father's home office when she thought he was asleep and started opening drawers, looking for documents, looking for account information. When Henry called from down the hall, she slammed the drawers shut and hurried out. And yet through all of it, through every absence and every betrayal, one person never left. Lily. She was there every single morning before the sun came up. She brought her father his medicine with a warm glass of orange juice. She changed his bed sheets. She read to him when he said his eyes were too tired. She sat beside him at night, holding his hand, and sometimes when she thought he'd fallen asleep, he would hear her whispering prayers so soft they barely made a sound. "God, please don't take my daddy. Please, not yet." One evening, Lily went to her mother with fire in her eyes. "Mama, we need to look into treatment centers. There's a specialist in Houston. I've already made calls." Dorothy shook her head. "Lily, the cost of that kind of treatment is enormous. And if it doesn't work..." She trailed off. Lily stared at her mother for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. That night, she sat on the floor beside her father's bed, her back against the wall, and she cried quietly in the dark. Henry could hear her. He kept his eyes closed, but his heart was breaking. Meanwhile, across town, Gerald was throwing a dinner party at one of their father's investment properties, telling his friends, "This place is basically mine now. It's only a matter of time. Some fires start slow, a spark here, a smolder there, and then suddenly the whole thing is burning, and there is nothing left to save." That is what happened to the Caldwell family as the weeks went on and the walls between them came down. Gerald had never been a patient man. He was the eldest, which in his mind meant he was owed something. So he walked into the Caldwell Group headquarters one Tuesday morning, stood in front of the boardroom, and announced that he was taking over operations effective immediately. "My father is not coming back," he told them flatly. "I am in charge now." One of the senior managers, a man named Mr. Dwight Okafor, who had worked for Henry for over 25 years, stood up calmly. "With respect, Gerald, your father is still alive. We ought to wait for his direction." Gerald's face darkened. "Are you questioning me in my own father's company?" Before the week was out, Mr. Okafor and 2 other loyal senior employees had been let go, their badges collected, their offices cleared. Gerald replaced them with his college friends, men who wore expensive suits but had never run a business a day in their lives. When Raymond found out, he flew back from Miami in a fury. He stormed into Gerald's new corner office, and the 2 brothers went at each other like strangers in a parking lot. Voices raised, chairs knocked back. Security had to separate them. It was Lily who stood in the doorway of that office with tears streaming down her face and said, quietly but firmly, "Our father's upstairs in a hospital bed, and this is what you 2 are doing." The room went silent. "He sacrificed everything for this family," she said. "Everything. And you can't even give him 6 months of peace." She walked away. Neither brother followed. Things at the house were no better. Raymond, determined to get something before Gerald took it all, drove downtown and walked into the Peachtree Grand Hotel. He told the manager, a kind woman named Ms. Carolyn Briggs, that the hotel was being sold and that she should prepare the paperwork. Ms. Briggs called Arthur Hines the moment Raymond left. Arthur moved quickly through a series of discreet arrangements. He had trusted associates purchase the hotel using a shell transaction, keeping the deeds safely out of Raymond's hands. The money Raymond thought he'd received was held in a protected account. Raymond never knew. He went home satisfied, feeling clever. But then Gerald found out the hotel was gone, and he exploded. He called a family meeting in the living room. Dorothy sat in her armchair like a queen. Patricia scrolled through her phone. Raymond crossed his arms. And Lily sat in the corner, watching all of them. "Someone sold the Peachtree Grand," Gerald announced. He looked straight at Raymond. Raymond looked straight back. "And someone sacked Daddy's best people and ran the company into the ground." Within 60 seconds, they were shouting. Within 2 minutes, Patricia had jumped in, screaming at Raymond about a plot of land he'd also quietly sold. Gerald threw a glass against the wall. Dorothy just stood up, stepped over the broken glass, and walked to the kitchen. Lily covered her face with her hands. Upstairs, Henry lay in his bed, listening to the chaos below. He could hear every word. And even though he was not truly sick, something inside him hurt deeply. The kind of pain that does not come from the body. The kind that comes from the soul. That night he whispered to the ceiling, "Is this what I raised?" And then Dorothy did something that broke whatever was left of Henry's heart. She hired a man named Brandon, 20 years younger than her, handsome and charming, and brought him into the house under the pretense that he was her personal driver. Henry didn't know about it at first, but Lily did. One night, Lily went to look for her mother and found her in the guest cottage behind the house, laughing and carrying on with Brandon like a teenager. Lily stood in the doorway, frozen. "Mama," she whispered. Dorothy jumped up. Brandon scrambled for his shirt. "Lily, I can explain." "Daddy is right upstairs," Lily said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it hit like thunder. Dorothy tried to reach for her daughter's arm. Lily pulled away, turned, and walked back to the house. She went straight to her father's room, sat beside him in the dark, and held his hand without saying a word. Henry kept his eyes closed, but he knew. He could hear her crying. The next morning, Lily made a decision that would change everything. There's a small town in southern Georgia called Clover Hills. Population just under 2,000. One traffic light. A diner on Main Street that serves the best peach cobbler in the state, and a church on every other corner. It is the kind of place where people still sit on their front porches in the evening and wave at whoever passes by. It is the kind of place Henry Caldwell was born. Lily packed her father's bags quietly, told the house staff she needed some fresh air for him, and drove Henry home. Not to the mansion in Atlanta. Home. To the little town where he grew up, where the red Georgia clay roads were still unpaved and the old folks remembered him as young Henry, the boy who used to sweep the barbershop steps for $1 and a dream. When the car pulled into Clover Hills, word spread the way only small-town word can spread, fast and warm. Within an hour, people started showing up at the small house where Henry's older cousin lived. They came with casseroles and sweet tea and banana pudding. They came with stories. They came with prayers. An elderly man named Mr. Roosevelt knocked on the door holding a basket of peaches and said, "Henry built a school library in this town. We haven't forgotten." A woman named Miss became with her church sisters, and they held hands in a circle around his bed and sang. Henry, lying there with his eyes closed, had tears rolling silently down the sides of his face. Lily watched all of it from the doorway, hand pressed to her heart. She had seen the people at her father's mansion forget him while he was still alive. And here were strangers, people with nothing to gain, showing up just to say, "We love you and we remember." One of the church elders, a tall man with a white beard named Deacon Isaac, pulled Lily aside. "There's a woman up the road," he told her. "Miss Ruth. She was a nurse for 40 years, and now she practices natural healing. Won't hurt to have her come look at your daddy. Might give him some comfort." Lily nodded. "Yes, please. Anything." Miss Ruth arrived the next morning. She was a small woman, 70 or so, with keen eyes that seemed to see straight through whatever you were feeling. She spent time alone with Henry, while Lily waited on the porch. Inside that room, Miss Ruth sat beside the old man and looked at him closely. "Your eyes are clear," she said. Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's because I'm not sick." Miss Ruth blinked. "Say that again." Henry took a slow breath and told her everything. The plan, the test, the 6 months of pretending. He told her about Gerald and the company. about Raymond and the hotel, about Dorothy and the young man she brought into the house. He told her about lying in that bed, listening to his family count down the days to his funeral like it was something to be excited about. Miss Ruth was quiet for a long time after he finished. Then she said, "So you held up a mirror to your family." Henry nodded, and I didn't like what I saw. She placed her warm hand over his and said, "But you saw something good, too." He looked at her. "Your daughter," she said. "She drove you here. She sat with you through every night. She cried in the dark so you wouldn't see her break." Miss Ruth paused. "That kind of love doesn't come from obligation, Henry. That comes from the heart." Henry closed his eyes. That evening, he asked his cousin to gather the family that had come to visit, all the aunts and cousins and neighbors and church members who had shown up over the past few days. They gathered under a big pecan tree in the backyard as the Georgia sun turned the sky pink and gold. Henry stood up. No cane, no wheelchair, no coughing. He stood up straight, and the crowd went still. "I have something to tell you all," he said. "I was never sick. You could have heard a pine cone drop." He told them the whole story. His voice was steady but heavy with emotion. When he described lying in bed listening to his sons fight over his hotel, while he was still breathing, a few of the older women shook their heads and covered their mouths. When he talked about Lily sitting on the floor beside him at night, the crowd exhaled with something between admiration and heartbreak. Deacon Isaac stepped forward and gripped Henry's hand with both of his. "Henry," he said, "you are the wisest man I know." A woman from the church called out, "And that daughter of yours is a treasure. Lord bless her." Lily stood to the side, one hand over her mouth, eyes full and glistening, completely overwhelmed. Henry turned to her. "Come here, baby girl." She walked to him, and he held her, right there in front of everyone. And he said, loud enough for all to hear, "This is the only one who stayed. They say the truth has a way of finding the light, no matter how deep you bury it." Henry Caldwell drove back to Atlanta on a bright Saturday morning, looking like a man reborn. He wore a clean linen shirt, his silver hair combed neatly, and he walked without help up the driveway of his own estate. Lily walked beside him. The iron gate swung open. The gravel crunched under his shoes. And one by one, the people inside the house stopped dead in their tracks. The housekeeper dropped a dish towel. A security guard whispered, "Lord have mercy." Patricia, who was coming down the staircase on her phone, looked up, and the phone slipped right out of her hand. "Daddy," she said, her voice cracking, "you're walking." "You're not. How are you walking?" Gerald came in from the side hallway, took one look at his father standing in the foyer, and grabbed the wall to steady himself. Raymond appeared in the kitchen with a glass of water, saw Henry, and the glass tilted slowly out of his grip and shattered on the tile. Dorothy came last. She stepped into the room and froze. Her face shifted through shock, confusion, and something that looked like guilt all at once. Henry looked at every single one of them. Then he said calmly, "Good morning. Please sit down." The next morning, Arthur Hines arrived with his leather briefcase and a thick folder of documents. He sat at the long dining room table. Henry sat at the head of it. Lily sat to his right. The rest of the family filled in around the table like a jury waiting for a verdict, because that was exactly what this was. Henry stood, took a breath, and told them the truth. All of it. "I was never dying," he said. "I never had cancer. It was a plan, a test, because I looked at the people in this house, and I needed to know who loved me and who loved what I owned." The silence that followed was total. Gerald stared at the table. Raymond rubbed his face slowly. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Dorothy looked out the window at nothing. Henry continued, "Gerald," he turned to his eldest son, "you walked into my company and announced yourself as the owner while I was still alive. You fired men and women who gave 20, 30 years of their lives to what I built. You threw parties with company funds and bought cars on a salary you gave yourself. You had the audacity to act like I was already in the ground." Henry paused. "The company money you spent, the house and the SUV you sold, that was your inheritance. It is gone now. You earned it and wasted it at the same time. You will step down from the company. effective immediately. Gerald's jaw tightened. A tear slid down his face, but he said nothing. Raymond. Henry turned to his second son. You sold the Peachtree Grand Hotel. You sold 2 acres of the Riverside land. You thought you were clever. He glanced at Arthur. Thank God my lawyer was cleverer. He bought them back. Those properties are still mine. And because you tried to sell what did not yet belong to you, you have forfeited your share of them permanently. You will also leave the company. Raymond dropped his head into his hands. Patricia, his voice softened only slightly. You have not done as much damage as your brothers. But you went into my office looking for documents while you thought I was sleeping. I saw you, and I have not forgotten. You will receive nothing until you prove, through time and action, that you deserve it. Patricia was crying now, silent tears running down both cheeks. Then Henry turned to his wife. The room got very quiet. Dorothy. He said her name with a weight that made everyone at the table look down. I gave you everything. A life, a home, children, 40 years of faithfulness. And while you believe I was dying, you brought a young man into my house and called him your driver. He stopped. I know what he really was. Dorothy opened her mouth. Henry, You have 24 hours, he said. Pack what is yours. Arthur has prepared the separation papers. They are fair, but you will not stay in this house. Dorothy stood up slowly, pressed both hands flat on the table, and walked out of the room. No argument, no scene, just the sound of her heels on the hardwood floor, and then silence. Henry turned one last time. To Lily, he reached out and took her hand. This young woman, he said, his voice finally breaking just slightly at the edges, fed me when I pretended I could not feed myself. She bathed me. She prayed over me in the dark. She drove me back to the town where I was born because she believed that love and fresh air might save my life. He stopped to collect himself. She is the only one in this room who passed the test. He nodded to Arthur, who opened the folder. Effective today, Lily Caldwell is named the sole primary inheritor of my estate. All remaining properties, holdings, and assets. She is also appointed CEO of the Caldwell Group. He looked around the table one last time. Arthur, please call back every employee Gerald dismissed. Their jobs are waiting for them. Arthur smiled. Already in the works, Henry. 1 year later, the Caldwell Group was stronger than it had ever been. Lily had brought back the old team, rebuilt trust with the clients who had walked away, and expanded the business with careful, thoughtful decisions. People in the industry called her Miss Lily, the steady hand. The staff adored her. The board respected her. And every Sunday morning, Lily drove to a quiet neighborhood in Midtown Atlanta and had breakfast with her father, just the two of them. Eggs, toast, sweet tea, and the kind of conversation that only comes when two people have already been to the fire together and come out the other side. Henry would sit across from his youngest child, watch her talk, watch her laugh, and feel something he had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Gerald and Raymond found their own paths, harder ones, and slowly began to rebuild what they had broken. Patricia kept trying, and with time, her father kept watching. Some doors, once closed, could be opened again, but only with the right key. Dorothy was never heard from again. And Henry Caldwell, the old man who had once stared at a family photo in the dark and asked himself who really loved him, finally had his answer. It was the one who stayed. It was always the one who stayed.